It is another wonderful time on television, and thanks for joining us the way you do every time on this program, Africa Discourse on independent television. My name is Evan Sunokuge. On this show, we look at issues around the continent of Africa, democratic issues, economic issues, and of course, democratic Africa, if you like. That's what we all as Africans are looking for. We are looking for a situation whereby the continent will be so democratic that most of the issues we are facing on this continent will just be a way back thing. My name is Evan Sudofugie. Today on the show, we're going to be joined by two erudite personalities. So when we have them, we're going to be having them, joining us virtually from outside of Benin. Well, a recent studies has, tried to show the rate of retrogression in terms of democratic, standards, democratic retrogression, if you like. And of course, some of the records that we have is that it's rated in terms of how rule of law is in those countries, and of course, in terms of how elections, democratic elections are in those countries. For example, we understand that in Algeria, the rule of law, this record is actually between 2010 and 2019, as at 2010 and 2019. So we understand that in Algeria, rule of law was minus 4.8%, while democratic elections was minus 5.8% for Algeria. Then, of course, in Burundi, we have the rule of law was rated at minus 8.2%, while democratic elections was rated as minus 4.7%. And of course, for Egypt, minus 4.3%. And for democratic elections in Egypt is plus 1.3%. Then in Guinea-Bissau, rule of law in Guinea-Bissau is minus 5.5%, while democratic elections stays at plus 0.4%. Then for Democratic Republic of Congo, we understand that the record between 2010 and 2019 stood at minus 4.4% for rule of law. Therefore, democratic elections, it stood at minus 10.3%. Then for Uganda, it stands, that's for rule of law now, between 2010 and 2019 in Uganda, it stood at minus 3.9%, while for democratic elections, it stood at plus 2.3%. All these are various rating in terms of rule of law and, of course, in terms of democratic, elections. Now, one way that you can actually see whether a country or a continent is growing in terms of democratic progress and all that is to look at the rule of law, to see the adherence of rule of law to the way rule of law is in those countries and, of course, in the continent. So in the continent of Africa, we're going to be looking at all that today. Let's see democratic challenges on the continent and, of course, the way forward. Well, from the University of Benin, but he's not joining us from UniBen this afternoon. He's joining us from Delta State University, Abraka, I suppose so. He's joining us virtually. Please welcome Professor Julius Eyasele to the show. Professor, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Just to state that I'm joining from University of Delta, Agbo.
Okay. All right, so good to have you. Yeah, so the issues around democratic issues on the continent of Africa is what we're going to be looking at today. A while ago, I just saw, we ran through about 5 countries between 2010 and 2019. And of course, we saw in terms of rule of law, in terms of democratic elections and all that. But we are yet to see the one of Nigeria. Maybe as the program progresses, we should be able to see the one of Nigeria. Let's see the position of Nigeria in terms of rule of law and, of course, in terms of democratic elections. Because when we talk about democratic advancement, the rule of law is one standard that we can use to measure democratic advancement and of course democratic elections too. All right, so Prof, let's have your insights in the first place. What is what are your impressions when we say democratic developments on the continent of Africa? What are your impressions? Yeah, Prof. Okay. All right. So we're trying to reestablish contact with Professor Julius Iyasele. When we have that, we're going to be joining him one more time so that we can talk about that and all that. Now, democratic backsliding, if you like, is one way of describing democratic challenges in Africa. While some other nations of the world seems to be advancing, most recently, we are seeing some nations in Africa, still taking the path of coup d'etat. For example, we saw what happened recently in Niger. We saw what happened in Mali, and we're also, hearing that the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC, is also flexing. All right, so Professor Julius, we have you now. Good afternoon, Professor.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. So I was asking what are your impressions when we're talking about democratic advancements in Africa. What are your impressions?
I'm sure it's wrong to use the word advancement. You would have said retrogressing or thereabout, because laws can only work in a system where you have a system, where you have one organized and all that. But that is where in African countries you have seen what is obtainable. I know that people quarreled at a time when a concerned person said we're in the jungle. How would you think that the rule of law will work in a jungle, in a place where there's no order and all that? So it's unlikely that laws will work in African countries, so many of them. So many African countries. Yours sincerely is not even different. Where order is not followed, where there is no system, where there is no organogram in any of MDA or whatever. So things are haphazard. They are upside down. Like we said, I told you earlier that Nigeria is an inverted pyramid, for instance. And so it is in all the other African countries. So the rule of law can't work here, as we have seen. That is just it. So what do you expect?
All right, so some analysts have gone beyond that to try to analyze what is happening on the continent of Africa. Hence, they have different ways of looking at it. They'd say that during the colonial era, it was a regime in terms of looking at democracy and all that. Not really democracy, maybe trying to describe government. They say that it was a regime. Then we passed that the colonial era, and here we are now after our colonial masters. So self-rule, you may call it, the third wave of governance on the continent of Africa. Now, Africa as a continent seems not to have still gotten it right, despite the very harsh experience we got from our colonial masters. What do you think are the reasons, Professor? Yeah. All right, so we are having some challenges with our network, connecting with Professor Julius Iyasele, so we try to reestablish and see how we can, be on that. Now, in the past few years, several regions. All right, so Professor, we'll have you back now. Prof, are you there? Professor, can you hear me? Hello, Prof. All right, so we were trying to look at that in the past few years, several regions around the world have experienced some form of democratic backsliding, like what I said a while ago. But the trend in Africa has been particularly alarming, as many forms of ways to describe the democratic developments in Africa. Some say it's a backsliding, and some say it's a moving from one step to 4 steps backward. All right, so Professor, we have you. Hello, Prof.
Yes.
All right, so I was trying to ask the question, what is really responsible for the backward movement or the backsliding of democratic development in Africa. I mean, we have passed the colonial era, and here we are now self-ruled, and we seem not to be getting it right. What are the issues?
Very simple. It's leadership. Whether you like it or not, people are watching. When you come out and you tell people A and what you are doing is a Z, then people will not follow. People will not follow the rules and all that. I'll give an example. If you come to a traffic light and it says don't move, and then you as a security agent or a leader of a country, you go against it, people are watching. At another point also, they will also, when they find that around them, everybody around there, they are leading them, they will also disobey. It's so simple. It is obeying order. That is it, by leaders. It's leadership by example. There's no two way about it. I don't know which other reason other people will adduce to this, but it's just simple that people are not, excuse me, when a particular president came into this country and I said I was not going to have a first lady office and all that, people hate him. At the end of the day, there's establishment of such. And what do you expect? It's for people not to take serious whatever he says subsequently. It's the same thing that is going on. That is the same order. People who are even lawmakers are lawbreakers in Nigeria. So how is a democratic, how are you going to advance democracy that is governed by rule of law here? That is the situation we are having. It's very, very simple. That is the truth.
All right, let's look at some recent developments, whereby coup d'etat seems to be, creeping into our political space. I mean, we've seen about 8 countries now on the continent of Africa, being led by, military coup guys. Now, would you want to say, because we've also seen, a very ugly development in that direction, whereby people came out and they applauded the incursion of the military guys into our political space. So would you want to also say that that is maybe the right way to think about it right now in terms of getting our political problems correctly?
Hello.
Yeah. All right, so the question I'm asking about the recent, intrusion of a coup into our political space. I mean, about 8 countries on the continent of Africa now are led by military guys. We have Niger, we have Mali, and of course we have some other countries there.
So many of them.
Yeah, so the one that happened most recently, we even saw whereby some people came out and they applauded the military for coming into the political space. So are you going to suggest, or would you want to also align with those that are of the school of thought that, okay, for us to get it correctly politically, let the military guys come in? Is that correct?
Let me tell you, those who make peaceful change impossible, make violent change inevitable. That is what you are saying. You have set up rule of law and you are not following the order. And so people will now use force. Didn't you see on the streets of Nigeria in a particular state or town where people were protesting and asking the military, they were passing soldiers, and they were asking, we want you to take over. That is even in Nigeria. Because people have waited and waited and waited for a system to be foisted here, and it's not coming. And people are getting agitated and hopeless about it. And the only thing that is possible in any system is a change. And so people want to see a change.
All right, so people want to see a change. Now, on your own scale, what would you want to say it is? I've asked that question a while ago, but let me rephrase it again now, because on a scale of 10, you have still the colonial interests in Africa. Then you also have the military making a conscious into our political space in Africa. Then you also have issues like corruption that gives rise to bad governance and all that. So In all this now, which one would you want to say has been a major problem that has been dealing with democracy in Africa, that has been a major concern for democratic challenges in Africa? All right, so Prof, it seems we're having challenges, trying to establish contact with Professor Julius Iyaselede. Now, Prof, can you hear me?
I'm hearing you.
Yes, the question I'm asking, you have military incursion, you have corruption, and of course you have the interest that seems that some colonial interests are still vested in Africa. So in all this now, which of them would you want to say is a major concern when we talk about democratic challenges in Africa?
The easiest for people to latch on now is military incursion. People are waiting for a change. They just want this system to change since it is not producing results. It is said, if you come to a tree that is supposed to produce fruit and there's no fruit on it, you hew it down, cut it down. That is what people are now agitating for. They want another thing, another type. They want to watch whether another system can help us in the country here. Are you with me?
Yes. I'm with you, Prof. All right, so we just keep on up there and see how we can continue with Professor Julius Iyaselede, who is joining us from Delta, somewhere in Delta. That's Delta State University, Agbo. All right, so like what I was trying to look at, we're looking at the various, rates. Yes, Professor, if you are there, I'm still here, Professor, just go on.
Yes, what I'm saying is that the people are waiting for a change. And the easiest change they think we can latch on is military incursion into our government space. That is all. Going back to the colonial rule might be difficult here. But somebody was saying recently that a bill is being presented in the National Assembly of returning back to the region, and people were excited. We just want something, we just want a change, and not this government of democracy that is now colored with impunity. Hello?
Yeah. I'm with you, just go on.
Yes. So what we're seeing here is not the kind of democracy that is colored with impunity. So what is the difference between what people are doing now and the military? So, and then very expensive government to run. So if military, you have just only one governor in the state, and then with other aides, then you have House of Assembly, National Assembly, this and that, and all of them. Very expensive government, and yet we are not making any progress. We are not achieving anything. People are lining their pockets, corruption everywhere, painting on the streets, and all that. So I think a change is what we need in Nigeria, and then even in Africa. But to return back to the colonial rule might be difficult. And so that is why people are testing the military incursion. Thank you.
All right, so there have been there has been various literature that have tried to describe why democracy seems to be failing in Africa, and one of the recent of it all suggests that Africa as a continent perhaps had its own system of governance before the introduction of democracy. Now, we still remember our pre-colonial system of governance and all that. Now, if we go back to that, Professor, do you think the issue of governance would have been solved a great deal on the continent of Africa?
Evans, let me even ask you, what system of government are we even running? Is this democracy or monarchy? How many people, so there are people who declare public holidays in Nigeria who are not in government. And so what system are we running? There are others making rules who are not in government. They don't use the government laws. In Nigeria, you have two different laws and all that being used. So what this is a disorganized system. So let's look for whether we can be saner by going back.
Okay, we're having the connection issues again. So you were about saying that let us see if we can be seener, if we can go back to our pre-colonial governance system. But that also may also have its own problems. You know, take for example, in the Igbo pre-colonial era, I mean in Nigeria here, where we had a decentralized system of governance in the East. There was actually no centralized system of governance. And I think also that that is also a problem in itself. I mean, governance is always a concept of everybody coming together and of course agreeing on a single purpose. So if we have a situation whereby we do not agree on a single purpose, then of course it means that we won't have laws and orders. We won't have rules that govern us. So if we now say that perhaps the democracy that, all right, so Professor, you are there. I think I have you back now.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so,
Yes.
Yeah, just go on.
You want us to practice feudalism, where you have feudal lords, or you want us to go back to parliamentary system at least? I think what will work better here is that let's reduce cost of governance, let's reduce government space, return back to regions, and contribute a little to the center. I think that might work better. It had worked before in the country, it worked better in the country and all that. Although the military boys dismantled that, and so they tried to bring in democracy to follow maybe our colonial masters, but that is not working here because the people respect order there. Here, we have not been able to institute order. That is why democracy won't work here. If we have instituted order where people respect laws, respect system, then maybe democracy would have worked. But we don't have that yet. I want to cite an example. The queue culture that you observe in banks and in so many social places now, it was established at the time by the Buhari administration. Then, before that time, nobody will observe any queue or any other when they come, for instance, into a bank. So, but they try to establish that, and people have imbibed that kind of culture. If we're able to establish that kind of culture in several other places of governance, then I'm sure that democracy would have worked. But right now, we don't have that. So,
okay. All right, so
maybe,
just go on.
Yes. So maybe we will need the military boys to establish a culture, beat everybody to the line. That is, make sure, configure the thinking of Nigerians or the thinking of Africans. Then we cannot bring back democracy. But democracy practice in Nigeria is very, very expensive. I don't understand why we should have 2 National Assembly houses. What is the essence of that? And all that. I even mentioned somewhere that.
Yeah, we're just having so much with the network this afternoon, but we hope it will improve as the program progresses. The program is still Africa Discourse on independent television, where we look at issues on the continent of Africa. And today we are looking at democratic challenges in Africa and, of course, the way forward. We've asked various questions and we've seen how we can begin to get it right. Now, Professor Julius Iyasele, who is our guest this afternoon, is joining us from Delta State University, Agbo campus, where he's joining us. Now, he has suggested 2 ways we can probably, surpass the democratic challenges. He said that we can go back to a regional system of government. Then also, he also said something about the military. that perhaps we should allow the military to come in, if I get him correctly, if I got him correctly now. But you and I know that the military making incursion into governance is totally an old fashioned. It's no more obtainable in any part of the world. Even those countries, in Africa, whereby recently the military came into governance, we are beginning to see that it's just only for the meantime. I mean, even the military guys too, they also know that, look, they don't have any business with governance. And of course, the countries whereby they have taken over governance there, they have said that they are just out there to fine-tune, to redirect, the people back to popular governance. That is the governance that you and I know, which is democratic. Now, we're going to take a short pause. When we return, we are going to further estray the two suggestions that Professor Julius Iyasile has talked about, the regional system of government. Now, we're going to be looking at how it can work in Nigeria, bearing in mind that Nigeria has 6 geopolitical zones. And for us to now go back to regional system of governance, is that not going to further complicate some of the issues we're having already in our country? Because that seems to be a major thing across the continent of Africa. Now, Prof, if you hear me loudly, perhaps you may have to continue from the suggestions that you were making earlier. You were trying to consider a regional system of government. Then, of course, you also made suggestions for that perhaps we may just allow the military to continue to make their incursions into governance in Africa. But you and I know that military in governance is no more fashionable anywhere in the world. I want you to take it up from there, from the military suggestion that you were making. Prof.
What the military needs to do, I think you have agreed with me. They are going to be here for a very short while. The essence of coming in is to help to structure the people, to insist that people obey rules and regulations.
Okay.
By force. Hello?
Yeah, I'm with you, Professor. Just speak on.
Yes. You can only do that. You can only use force for people. The military will come in for a short while to direct on the ways people should behave, to obey rules and regulations. That is just what they will do. After that, they will vacate and allow the regional system to come in. And for regional system, you are tending towards a nation. A nation is a homogeneous system, not the kind of heterogeneous system that we have. Everybody is going to Abuja. And when you go there, any amount of money you meet there, you park it. Yeah, what I'm saying is that the military will come for a short while to redirect the way people behave, to make sure people adhere to rules and regulations. That only the military can do that now for a people that are already fixated, for a people who are already laced with high level of corruption and all that. You need to use force to command and control the way people should behave. After that, you return back to regional system of government, and going back to regional system of government, you are tending towards a nation. A nation is a homogeneous system. You understand? Not the kind of what we now observe in Nigeria. The heterogeneity in Nigeria is so much. That is why people can do anything. You go to Abuja, meet any amount of money on the table, you pack it, you don't care what happens to other people. But when you return back to a nation, we are all together, and you know that the money, whatever you take from there, belongs to all of us, then you will behave better. We have seen it before and all that. And so that is what I think that could work now. For instance, you mentioned 6 regions, please. I don't know which are the 6 regions, because we must remember that Midwest is one region, always. The only region that was set up by a referendum. So Midwest is one. So whichever others, and I want to advise that we won't need to team up with any other. We stay in our system that is very, very balanced. The Midwest state is very, very balanced. If Nigeria is ever returning back to a region or to regional governments, Midwest must be one and not being coerced into any other group.
Okay. All right,
Thank you.
Professor. Yeah, Prof. I said 6 geopolitical zones. I did not say 6 regions. I said 6 geopolitical zones.
Okay, so
Now,
thank
it
you.
is, it is in these 6 geopolitical zones now that you have a region. But again, Prof, let's start from the military that you are talking about. Now, the kind of military boys that we are having in Africa now, making incursions maybe to remedy governance in Africa, they are perhaps different from the military guys that we knew. I mean, the military guys that,
No, no,
cool.
no, no, I disagree. What is happening in Burkina Faso?
Yeah,
What is
not,
happening in Burkina
the,
Faso?
yeah, but the reason why I'm saying so, Prof, is because that the military guys we're having now, they seem not to be living governance in time. I mean, they come in under the pretext that, hey, we are
Okay,
going to fix things, and they stay there for almost eternity.
okay, the sit tight.
Yes.
The sit, yeah, sit tight. Well, uh, things happen and times change. So it's for us to look at all of that and then find a way to make sure, you know, all of this can also be done by a kind of conference system that Good Luck organized and all that. And so let people know the essence and write, the itinerary of the military that we're going to have in caution in government. This is what they are going to do. These are the ideas. And then more importantly is also to pray for a benevolent person, a benevolent military who will come understand why he is there. That is just it, not the greedy military. That is my prayer.
All right, so let's look at the regional system of government that you talked about. Now, incidentally enough, I think what is happening in Nigeria seems to be replicating in other countries in Africa. I mean, the issue of resource control, which is a major issue, cascading into governance in Nigeria. Now, if we say that, okay, we'll return back to regional system of government, don't you think the issue of resource control will come up? Now, a while ago, I talked about 6 geopolitical zones. The Midwest region that you talked about happens to fall into the South-South geopolitical zone that we have now. So if we now say that, okay, let's return back to regional government, in Nigeria, maybe in some other countries of Africa. Now, the issue of resource control, is it not going to be an issue, Professor?
Why should it be an issue? It's because it will be an issue for lazy people. What is Israel depending on? That they are feeding the world and able to take on the Arabs in a war situation. What do they have? What do you have in Israel? How big are they? It's for lazy people. You shouldn't think about that. However, those who have resource in or resources in their region should contribute to the center a percentage and be in charge of their resources and all that. Not what is happening now. Let me tell you something. Remember that the way for revenue derivation before the military boys was, how much you bring from your place and all that. But shortly after that, when oil now came, and then people became wise in a very dangerous way, now said that they will not derive by population. And all these are annoying people. People are annoyed. People know whether you force people to accept whatever is foisted on them, but there's anger everywhere. So we must understand all of this. So give a little to the center and use the rest to develop your region, and you will see. And for regional government, there will be competition, especially when you have a healthy competition. You will see monumental growth in this country. That is just the truth.
All right, so let us also look at the idea of in some countries whereby you have a certain president staying for almost for eternity. I mean, we still remember the Paul Bias, spending almost their whole lifetime, as president. Now, I think that is also a major challenge in our governance, in democratic developments in Africa, Prof.
Yes, that's why I said that a kind of itinerary need to be written. And then the military that is coming in should know that this is why they are coming in. They have job description, and then based on the timeline, that is when you have an organized system. And that is why I'm praying for a benevolent military. That's all. Not the kind of Kobia type.
A benevolent military, can we ever have such a situation when
They are
this,
everywhere.
yeah.
It's not that I'm not a military man. Put me in government. I will do 2 years and structure Nigerians and live there.
Prof, now what would you say about the fact that even the military guys that you are making suggestions for now, there are enough reasons to, reckon with what seems to be a fact now that this military, even if they eventually hand over governance to the civilian, they just put in their men, and it's still the same thing. What would you say about that, Prof?
It's not true. They put in their men in their regions or where. The issue here is, the issue is that what the democratic government have foisted on this country is unheard of. It's unassailable. The evil that you have here. That is, see, we brothers are no more brothers. The only social class you have now, which they have succeeded in impacting on this country, is ethnicity and religious inclinations and all that. That is.
All right, so ethnicity and religious affiliation seems to be the only true relationship that we have in Africa. That's what Professor is trying to say. But I think that's just his own opinion about how we live our lives in Africa. All right, so if we can still reestablish our connection back with Prof, let's do that so that we look at the way forward as we gradually draw this discussion to a conclusion this afternoon. Yeah, the program has been Africa Discourse on Independent Television, and we'll be looking at democratic challenges on the continent of Africa and ways to see how we can surmount these challenges. Now, Professor, so as we wrap it up now, so let's begin to look at the solutions now. Though you have hinted on some of them earlier on, but on a more maybe on a more expansive note, let's begin to look at the solutions to some of these political challenges that we'll be talking about.
We have said it's not possible now to return back to the colonial masters. We have said democracy is not working. We have said it's not working because they are not directing this country well. The government is very, very expensive to run. And then they have become very distant from the people. And so we are saying a government, a system that will come closer to the people. And that is why I advocate regional government. I said before regional government, let the military come to clean the ugly stable. Let them come and redirect the thinkings of Nigeria the way we behave.
But let us be careful. Prof, let us be careful with that now, because we have a sitting government now. So to say let the military come, let us be careful with that, Prof.
No, what I'm saying is that I'm suggesting the military. I'm not saying that they should come.
Okay.
Yes.
Just go on.
It's a suggestion we are making. We are trying to write a proposal. It's not as if we have the powers to put the military in power.
All right, so I think, yeah, if you're done, I think we will draw the conclusion today on the program. We want to say a very big thank you to Professor Julius Iyasele, who joined us virtually from Delta State University, Agbo campus. Professor, thank you so much for finding time to join us on the program today. All right, so that's the program, Africa Discourse on Independent Television. By next week, Monday, we will come here with another exciting topic on the program. My name is Evan Sunukugi. Goodbye and God bless you.